be educated, but I'm so frustrated. Hello to my loneliness. I guess that ignorance is bliss. Take me back to before I knew. Rewind, take it out of cue. Innocence can be a young man's game. Signed up for the hall of shame. I wish I knew how much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed. When we play our roles and ignore the problems. I like to be away in my patience. Stay up, I feel so outdated. How can we look the other way? Sun is out, but the sky is gray. What would happen if I took a chance? It's always hard at first glance. I don't wanna, but I know I gotta do it. The truth is hard to swallow, I think I'll chew it. I wish I knew how much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed. When we play our roles and ignore the problems. I wish I knew how much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed. When we play our roles and ignore the problems. I wish I knew educated, but I'm so frustrated. How much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed. Educated, but I'm so frustrated. When we play our roles and ignore the problems. I wish I knew educated, but I'm so frustrated. How much I miss not knowing that we're all screwed. Educated, but I'm so frustrated. When we play our roles and ignore the problems. I wish I knew.
Hello, fellow and future entrepreneurs. I am the host of Tailored Talk, Colin Hardiman. Very excited to have you all for another episode, episode 5, the essentials to starting a business. So as I always do, I like to recap what we discussed on the last episode. So in I've started my business, now what? We've talked about creating a business plan. We talked about creating a mission statement, defining your target audience, outlining your products and services, making a marketing strategy to define your mission and vision statement, and setting financial projections, building hype and excitement, and then launching. So we got all of those things out of the way. We're pretty much, getting into the nitty-gritty of starting our businesses. So we have all of our tangible and intangible things in place. Tonight's episode is going to focus on the essential things, which is, let's be real, what keeps businesses going and what keeps the heartbeat of the business going is funding, is capital. So those are essential things that your business needs to constantly operate. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, and I'm very excited to have tonight's guest, So before I introduce him, I'm going to read some accolades really quick, as I always do. This man is one of the most educated men in America. He has amassed 7 college degrees with honors, attending some of the most prestigious universities and colleges in the country. He was awarded by the Small Business Administration for having one of the fastest growing businesses in Louisiana. Similarly, the government of Louisiana bestowed the prestigious Mentor Award for graduating thousands of students through his numerous CDL schools. He's a serial entrepreneur who owns and operates several commercial driving schools, trucking companies, and brokerage companies, and is the founder of Business Credit University, an online financial literacy company that helps students master business credit and funding. And we're going to talk about that tonight also. Today, he will guide us on how to obtain over $1 million in business credit funding, as he has done for himself, his family, and numerous other students. So without further ado, I would like to introduce tonight's guest, Mr. Herman Marigny III. Herman, how are you doing today, sir?
Man, I'm good, Colin, and yourself. Man, to be here. I absolutely love the mission that you have to help, to energize and educate budding entrepreneurs. So I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, and I'm glad to have you on here too. And I've heard Herman speak in numerous rooms on Clubhouse, and when I tell you he knows his stuff when it comes to building credit, funding your business, obtaining trade lines, and more. He knows his stuff, so I was very strategic in asking him to be on this podcast because he really will offer a wealth of information that will help your business not only grow but thrive. So Herman, I want to be respectful of your time so we can get right into this. So let's talk about growth versus scale. What is the difference between growth versus scale?
All right, so off the top of your head, I want you to think about this, right? I want you to think about when maybe you were young and you had a lemonade stand, right? And you had a lemonade stand in a nice area, nice location with a lot of traffic. So in essence, your business is growing. What I mean is that you got customers, you're in a nice location, and you're consistently making more and more money every week. Now, when it comes to scale, we're talking about differently. We're talking about you now having lemonade stands on every corner in your subdivision, instead of maybe just your one making money, growing your one lemonade stand growing weekly with its sales. Now you have multiple lemonade stands, and in order to run multiple lemonade stands, you have to have a system. So I want you to think that scale is a system in place for you to do what you were doing to grow that one lemonade stand, to grow that into multiple lemonade stands. So that's going to take the ability to have a management team in place, the ability to have the funding in place, the ability to lead and inspire and to grow. Think of same thing with McDonald's. McDonald's started with one location in the 1950s, and now there's millions of locations all throughout the world.
Right. Wow. Okay. Great way to break that down. Really appreciate that. So let's talk about the growth portion. So as far as like effectively growing your business, what are some effective ways to grow your business?
All right, so this is how I grew my business, right? So I started with one CDL school, and that CDL school was growing to a capacity. We had like hundreds of students coming through the school, and then I seen a need to open up more CDL schools, but I had to come in and I had to market, right? At every new location, they didn't know who I was. So in order for me to be able to grow that location and to start scaling, you have to understand not only about systems, not only about training people, right? But you also have to understand about marketing. Marketing is an essential part of you having the ability to have sustainable scalability.
Absolutely, because marketing is what gets you in front of your potential customers. Because there's literally thousands, millions of businesses out there. So how do you stand out amongst the others? How do you get your business in front of others that may not know you even exist? And that's marketing. So we talked about in our last episode. So then also, I would imagine you had a business plan as well, because that takes a plan also when you look at, strategically even placing your businesses. So did you have a business plan in place?
I did, indeed. In fact, the first time that I received funding, it was pretty much required back about 15 years ago. Before you could receive funding, they wanted to see your business plan. So my first business plan really was in college when we was creating one. But when I created one for real world, it was totally different. That business plan needed to be succinct. It needed to have everything to scale, and it had to have a SWOT analysis inside of it, which basically for your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you would encumber along your journey, along your capitalistic journey. So yes, it's essential, but not just for the bank or anybody else. You need a plan for yourself, because like somebody famous said, everybody have a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and then the plan goes out. But there was a famous capitalist who said that he would rather follow a fool with a plan than a genius without one. That's how important planning is. And that business plan is your first step, your first hurdle to putting your idea, putting how you want to grow your business down on paper, and then execute it.
Right. Well, that's the saying is if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. So whether you want to or not, you are planning. So if you don't plan, you're planning to fail. Okay. And then did you want to go into, well, we'll get into the scaling portion. So we can go on to our next point as far as multi-member LLCs. So what is it that you would like to contribute as far as like multi-member LLCs? Because in episode 2 and 3, we did get into multi-members because we talked about single member sole proprietorships, now, and as of today by the IRS, they're looked at as disregarded entities. So it is important to get multi-member LLCs. And maybe you could just talk about the benefits of multi-member LLCs, Herman.
Correct. So for the new people, limited liability company is a great way to start your business. There's multiple ways to start a business, whether you do C Corp, S Corp, multi-member, and also you can do sole props. But I'm not very fond of sole proprietorships. In fact, I prefer you to have a multi-member LLC, which means is that there's more than one member inside of your corporation. I'll give you an example of me and my wife, right? We're in one of my CDL schools. It's a multi-member with her being a member and me being a member. Let me tell you the benefits of that. The benefits of that is when it comes to funding, right? So prior to adding her to my multi-member LLC, I had a trucking company. Inside the trucking company, I bought a bunch of trucks. And by me buying a bunch of trucks, my personal credit got hit. I mean, it had a lot of inquiries on there. And so when it's time to expand and buy trucks for the school, by having a multi-member corporation, we're able to use my wife's credit, and I take the back burner. She jumps in the driver's seat, so to say, and I take the back seat, and we use her credit to be able to do everything. So a multi-member is easier to fund. Because with a single member LLC, everything is on one member. So if something happens to me, if I'm a single member LLC, the corporation dies. Multi-member corporations, they like because there's somebody that can take over if something happens to the major member. And the more people in it, the more they like. But you need to structure it in such a way that they won't pull everybody's credit when it's time to do credit. So we structure it to where a lot of times my wife may have 85% and I may have 15% for this particular corporation. We'll change that later on. But you're absolutely right. Having a multi-member LLC is critical to funding when it's time for you to go get funding and taken seriously, because otherwise you're going to see it as a mom and pop single stuff. You're going to see a sole prop as a mom and pop type of deal.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting take. So thank you for sharing your own personal story with us as far as how you structure your multi-member LLC. But as I'm listening, then I'm thinking about what is the strategy behind doing a multi-member? Because there's going to be some people out there who doesn't have a spouse that are not married, that might be starting off by themselves. So what would be the strategy, to put in place as far as like, okay, I know I need a multi-member to better position me for funding later on down the road. So
yeah,
who do I pair with?
It doesn't necessarily have to be a person. Another corporation could be a member, right? A trust could be a member. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody. You can add your trust into your LLC. You can add another corporation into your LLC. But you do not want to be a sole prop. That's the bottom line. And even I can say this, you need to find somebody to be inside of your corporation because you do not. It's hard for me to get you funding as a sole prop, all right? Because if something happens to you, the corporation goes under. That's it. There's nothing living. There's nothing else to do. You wear all the hats. So by you wearing all the hats, you're more risky to me. So if something was to happen, God forbid something was to happen to you. So find another member. I don't care if it's another corporation, if it's a trust, or someone, but find somebody to enter into a multi-member situation when it comes to funding and growing.
So that's new information because I personally didn't even know that, as far as like you can put a trust as another member into your LLC. So,
yeah, that's a very popular strategy. A lot of times people do. I would own 5%. The trust would own 95%. So the trust gets so many tax write-offs. The trust gets a lot more. I'm going to say amenities than an individual would. So a lot of people, you'll see a lot of wealthy people, they're structured to where the trust owns majority of the corporation, and that person, for tax reasons, may only own 5%, but they also control the trust. Mm-hmm.
So if there's ramifications that come up on the company, then you're pretty much guarded by that trust since it has the majority of the percentage. Is that correct?
It does. It does.
Okay. So we are going to talk about trust in later episodes also, but I just want you to kind of go into it. I don't want this to be foreign and go over people's heads. So if you could just go into a little bit of getting that trust, because of course now we know that we can put a trust into our multi-member LLC. So how do you go about getting that trust and establishing it?
So let me say this, right? I got a trust for my in-laws, right? It was a revocable trust. So a lot of times trusts are going to come two ways. It's going to be revocable or irrevocable. And so you have to decide what the end goal is. Once you decide what the end goal is, I'm going to suggest that you sit down with somebody that's familiar with trust, somebody to set your trust up, depending on what you're trying to do. But just know that there's two types of trust, revocable and irrevocable. Revocable means you can change your mind. Irrevocable means when it's set, it is set in stone. And then you want to make sure that you're legally safe. What I mean is that there's some trust that's run by the state and some that federal government recognize. But the ability to be, the anonymity that a trust gives and the tax protection or overall protection that a trust gives is unbeatable. So I would tell any and everybody that you're growing your assets, that you want to be able to put your corporation, your LLC, into a trust. I'll never forget, about 35 years ago, John F. Kennedy and his family, they have a trust, and I didn't know how powerful the trust was. They turned around and they sold one of their assets for $600 million. We're talking about 35, 40 years ago. So I didn't know how much was in the trust, but it sold that asset and closed right back up. So a trust is a great way to protect your assets and to be able to pay lower taxes on your LLC, because you only control 5% of the LLC, and your trust controls 95%, which has much more tax benefits than the individual.
I gotta let this marinate. We're just gonna. That was a ton of information that it just so seamlessly just slipped out of his mouth. I mean, it just flows. Now y'all see what I was talking about when I say I listened to this man in these clubhouse rooms and listen to these panels, these discussions he's in, and it's just a wealth of information. If you're not taking notes, you're missing so much. So definitely go back and rewind this, because that was a full episode right now that he just gave you. So that's very important, Herman, too, because I know our community we really don't know these type of things. And that's why, if we're just being real, other communities are miles ahead of us because they know this information, whereas we don't. We're just going with the bare basic, top layer, where it's just like, no, there's strategies, there's resources available to, strategically set yourself up, your business up for multi-millions, if not billions. But it's all about having
as well.
Exactly. That's the word I was looking for, longevity. But it's all about just knowledge, because knowledge is definitely important. So before we move on, is there anything else you want to say while we're on the subject of multi-members?
Yeah. So what Mr. Collins is telling you is absolutely correct. I highly recommend for you to get a multi-member LLC or a C Corp or something with multi-members in it. it is seen as more durable and it's seen as more stable. So that's great.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be real with y'all. I have an amendment to make. I have an amendment to make because I'm currently set up as a sole prop LLC. So I was already on that new trajectory, like I said, with having Coach John on the episode talking about multi-members. So it's like longevity is the key word. So you really got to look further ahead, not just where you are right now, but look further ahead as far as like where you want the business to be. You're going to want to do business with the government in the future. Set yourself up right now to do business with the government. Put yourself in position to win. So just one more time, the IRS today looks at sole proprietor or single member LLCs as disregarded entities. That is going to disqualify you for a lot of resources and funding right there. So if you're starting out the gate and you're getting a single member, you're already building the wrong steps. So I have an amendment to make. You have a multi-member LLC to start. So thank you so much, Herman, for that information.
You're welcome.
So let's get into personal credit optimization. So personal trade lines, because we're talking about setting up our business, and we've been talking about separating business from personal, but now we're getting into how personal can actually help you in business also, with your business, using your personal credit optimization, Herman.
That's fine. Can I say something first?
Absolutely.
So I love the way that you're structuring your business as a multi-member. I need you to add a few more things to that, right? We want to make sure that you have the correct NAICS code. NAICS code is how the banks and financial institutions classify you as, right? So the last corporation that I opened up, it was a software development company. And so because software tech companies, they get more funding. You want to have a NAICS code that has the highest chance of getting the maximum amount of funding. And you want that NAICS code to be consulting, management, technology, medical, along those lines. You can easily Google and find out what's the highest funded NAICS codes. And also there's some NAICS codes you need to stay away from, right? A lot of times, like lending, if you're another lender, they don't like to open up and let you do business if you're in financial lending. They don't like a lot of parts of real estate because they got stung in 2008, 2009. They had a lot of property on their books, so they do not really care for real estate per se. You would have to find hard money lenders or somebody that's specifically into real estate. Stay away from dry cleaners, right? You want to stay away from even trucking. And sometimes of the year, even trucking is seen as a high risk. So when you are structuring yourself as that multi-member, you also want to make sure that the codes that you are being classified as is funding friendly.
Right, absolutely. And once again, episode 2. So shout out Coach John because he really broke down the NAICS codes, and he put some resources too, where as Herman stated, where you can find what are those high earning NAICS codes. But NAICS.com. And then go back and refer or reference episode 2 where he really breaks down those NAICS codes. So absolutely.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so let me get into personal credit optimization. So now that you have your multi-member setup, now that you have your proper NAICS codes that's going on, before you do anything, before they look at your business per se, they're going to look at your character. They're going to look at your personal credit, right? And if they look at your personal credit, they're not just talking about a score. A lot of people, they get hung up on having a nice score. That might be from high school or colleges where you have to get A's and everything else. So you want maybe the highest scores. And a lot of the personal credit bureaus have scores anywhere from like 300 to 850. So a lot of times we hung up on whether we have a 6, 7, or 800 or whatever the case might be. But I'm here to tell you that your score is just the starting point, right? So if you have a decent score, that means that y'all can have a conversation. Y'all can have a first date per se. So when you go on that date, they're going to look under the hood. They're going to ask more questions, right? So let's just say that you have a 750 credit score. And so that's good. So we're on a date. We're thinking about funding you with that 750 credit score, but they're going to have a few questions. And those questions have to do with optimization, meaning, is your credit profile optimized for funding? That's what they're thinking, right? Can I fund this profile and then can I resell it into the market? And when I say personal credit optimization, right? So the score got you to the date, the score got you to the table, but now the underwriter is about to ask you a few questions, right? This is your first date and you want some money. So on this first date, he's going to ask you basically, what's your credit utilization? What that means is that if you have credit card with 10,000 and you're using 8,000 of it, that's 80% utilization. That's basically you're living off of that credit card. You understand? So credit card utilization is super important to these underwriters. They also want to know.
Oh, wait, before you move on, what is that? What is that preferred utilization range you want to be in?
All right, beautiful. So they prefer you to have under 30% utilization. My students, I prefer them to have between 6 and 9%. And that's because it triggers the algorithm for higher amounts of funding. But anything under 30% is seen as fundable. They can work with, if you have a $10,000 card, if you have 2,500, under 3,000 on a card, they're good with that. All right. So that's a great question. Utilization ranges of what they're looking for on the personal side. The business side is a little higher, but we're talking personal credit optimization. And the reason why they're looking at your utilization is because that's a red flag. If utilization is high, that means you're in trouble financially because you're living off your credit cards. And I don't want to be the next one to give you a loan, and then maybe I'm the one that you start defaulting on. So credit card utilization is super important. Another thing that's important is what I call comps. Just like in real estate, when they go to give you a house value, they do comps like from the nearest houses a mile around. Same thing on your credit. Or why am I about to give you $50,000 on your credit card? You've never had a credit card over $1,000, right? So it's important that before you go to funding your personal credit file, right, it shows high limit credit cards, 5,000 or greater, right? 10, 15 is better with low utilization, with credit of at least 3 to 5 years. You want a mixture on your credit of both installment and revolving. Installment is bills that you pay the same amount every month, like a car, a house loan, a furniture loan, whatever the case might be. And revolving debt is like credit card debt. That carries more weight. The credit card debt carries more weight as far as the points on the system. So again, to be able to get this funding, they're going to pull your personal credit, and they're not going to just look at your score. They're going to look at your personal credit profile, and they're looking for certain data points. Another data point that they like to see is they like to see that you have that mixture of revolving and installment. Like I said before, they like to see that mixture. It gets you more points. They like to see the history. But these are the things right here that you have to be really careful about. They don't want to see any derogatory marks on your credit. They don't want to see any late payments, no charge-offs, nothing, because they're thinking they're going to be the next person or entity that has to file a charge-off. They don't want to see, that's right. They definitely don't want to see too many inquiries on your credit profile. That means you've been dating a lot. People's been pulling your credit, car dealership, other loan places. That means you're looking for credit, and they can't see if you got it or not. So a lot of times, people like Chase, Wells Fargo, if you got more than 5 inquiries in 24 months, they will not deal with you. They will not. They will deny you based on you having too many inquiries because they don't know who all then gave you money. So you have to be careful with your credit profile, not your credit score. Because I tell people, I had a friend some 5 years ago, he had an 800 credit score. He couldn't get no money. He had an 800 credit score. So not credit score alone. His credit score had all authorized users on it. Authorized, he borrowed somebody else's credit, put it onto his credit profile. And he had an 800, 805, 810. But he got a used car, he got some furniture, right? And he got an apartment, but he couldn't get any money because they can see clear as day on his credit profile that those were authorized users. They borrowed this month, they can go away next month. So that's what it is. In order to go to funding, you need your credit optimized for funding, and your credit profile has to speak to the underwriter that you're ready for funding.
Okay, so let's say, the scenario. Okay, I'm starting my business, but I don't have any personal credit established. Not because I've been defaulted or anything, but I just don't have any history. I just never got one. And now I started my business. Now I know I need to get funding, but I have no history. There's nobody that'll give me credit cards. I'm getting denied for everything because everyone says I don't have any credit history. Like, of course. So how do I come out of the gate? How do I establish my credit?
So there's several ways to establish credit, right? And it depends where you're at on the continuum. Let's act like you have no credit at all, right? So a great way that you can establish credit is through secured credit cards. There are secured credit cards. A lot of banks will offer secured credit cards because it's secured. But you want to deal with Wells Fargo. You want to deal with Navy Federal, people that the secure is going to go away. So you're going to start off secured, but in maybe a couple of months, right, 6 months, then it reverts to a non-secured card, right? Unsecured card per se. So if you don't have any credit, that is a great way to start. is through the secured credit card route. And another way to start is to add trade lines to your credit profile. So if you do know somebody, or you can pay somebody to get authorized trade lines added to your account. Let me give you a quick story, right? My son, who had gotten in some trouble some years and years ago, he came home and he had no credit. He had no credit at all. Well, I'm sorry. Some people had opened up some accounts in his name, like light bills and everything else, and they didn't pay. So we had to get rid of those or delete those negative accounts. And then me and my wife had to add trade lines to his account, add primary trade lines and also authorized trade lines to his account. So he went from basically having no credit to about a 780 credit score because we added about 6 trade lines to his account. And when I say 6 trade lines, that means like Bezos, MasterCard, Macy's, Home Depot. We had added him as an authorized user, and then we also added him as a primary to our accounts, meaning a joint account. You add somebody to a joint account, it shows up as a primary on your credit profile. So I know he was going to need a thick profile because a thin profile can't get funded either. And a thick profile would be more than 6, preferably 10, but between 6 and 10 will get the job done.
Okay. So I have a question because I heard both scenarios. And I heard you say a person with an 800 credit score couldn't get funding because he had nothing but personal trade lines. But then in this scenario,
he had authorized trade lines. Authorized is he borrowed somebody else's credit, and but that person's credit will stay on there as long as that person wants to. Next month, that person could remove them. So the bank, they're smart to that. They've seen that back in the 80s and the 90s. So they ran that through. So if he had nothing but borrowed credit. He borrowed somebody else's credit to beef up his credit profile, and it shows on his credit profile as authorized. So the bank wouldn't give him any money. The car dealership.
So with the scenario with your son, what was that?
Beautiful. So we added authorized, and we added him as a joint user. A joint user is a primary account. When you add somebody as a joint user, that account becomes theirs. The history, the good payments, all of that becomes theirs. So it shows as a primary account on that person's credit profile.
So would you say that is the ideal way to go when establishing credit for the first time?
That's the ideal way when you're going after funding. Okay? Because I remember I said before, secured credit cards can still get you, and it's still primary accounts. And there's other places that you can establish secured credit. I wrote a book, an ebook, and in the ebook, I put all of that in the ebook of where you can go to get primary accounts, and as well as where you can go to add authorized accounts to your user. What's the most important thing is to have that mixture and at least have 6 to 10 accounts that's showing up primarily primary accounts as opposed to authorized, which are borrowed accounts. Awesome. So that's great.
And that ebook will be linked in the description. So y'all just click on the link and get a copy of that ebook. It's in the description. So I just wanted people to catch that just as far as because we're all on this podcast, we're all about giving the most ideal, optimum position, resource to put you in a place where you can succeed, where your business will succeed. So the other thing I want to ask you is, could you please break down secured versus unsecured, just in case, some of our viewers.
Not a problem. So I want you to think as secured is like your house. If you went and got a loan and you own a home, you're putting up your home as collateral for that loan. So if you don't pay back that loan, they can come and they can take the house. The same thing with cars, jewelry, all of that stuff could be used. Any asset could be used as collateral, right? So if you're getting out the loan, and in the case of what we were talking about, a secured credit card, you put $500 in the bank and they give you a $500 limit. That $500 credit limit is backed by the $500 deposit. Whether it's 500, 1,000, 10,000, doesn't matter. Your credit is secured by the cash deposit. So secured means it has some type of asset backing it up. Unsecured is just the opposite. You're just using your word. They're trusting your character and your credit profile for you to pay back the loan.
Awesome. Okay, so we dealt with personal credit optimization and personal trade lines. So now let's get into the adding business trade lines. So just go into that because we talked about the personal side. Now let's tie in the business side of things as far as acquiring funding for our new businesses.
Okay, so now we got to the meat and potatoes of the issue, right? But first, I love the way you set this up. You segue from the idea of structuring your corporation correctly, making sure you have the right NAICS code, and then also knowing that they're going to pull your personal credit. Like 9 times out of 10, before they give you business credit, they're going to look at your personal character. They're going to look to see what you've done, if you paid back your personal bills before they give you business money. So the way that you're setting it up is excellent, right? Making sure you're structured correctly with a multi-member LLC, making sure you have the correct NAICS code, and then making sure before you ask for funding that your personal credit is built out, optimized for funding. Now that it is optimized for funding and everything else is structured, now it's time for you to go after business funding. Because the reason why you go after business funding, because it does not show up on the personal side of your credit, and you can get access to more capital. I'll give you a perfect example. When I first got 180,000 nearly 15 years ago off a brand new business, right?
I'm sorry, could you say that figure again?
Yeah, so the first time that I got business funding, I received $180,000. 50,000 of it was ultrasound machines, equipment finance, and another 130 was business credit cards, which I pulled the cash off of the business credit cards to start my business, an imaging, a medical company that I started. But the point being, it was a brand new business. So the only thing they could use is my personal credit. Now, of that 130,000 that I got approved for, Bank of America gave me 50,000. And I was surprised because I had a $12,000 personal loan with Bank of America, but yet on the business side, this same bank gave me 4 times as much on the business side. Same bank, right? Same credit score, everything. So what happens is on the business side, they can give you more money because you have less oversight. They have less oversight on the business side. On the personal side, I can cry that I didn't understand the interest rate. I didn't fully understand the contract, and I can maybe get that voided. So on the personal side, they don't give out that much credit. On the business side, you can't go talking about you don't understand the APR, you didn't understand the contract. So it's easy for them to recover their funds. So they're much more liberal on the business side. So the business funding is where you want to be, but first you want to set up to make sure everything is right. Question?
Yes, awesome. Because the gears are turning as you're breaking this down. So when you are going for the business funding, the businesses or the bank is looking at the way your business is structured, correct? So in this case, multi-member LLC, correct?
Correct. That's one thing they're looking at, multi-member. Correct.
Right. So 2 scenarios. So let's go back to the scenario of you and your wife, where she was majority. Like when you first started out, she was majority. So were they looking at her personal credit more versus yours? And
They
then
didn't look
also
at mine at all. The reason being is because there's a thing that if you have more than 20% of the company, then they're going to look at both things. So I don't suggest when you do your multi-member, do 50-50. You can switch it up as much as you want, because we switch back and forth. If my credit is cleaned up and everything's good, I'll take her out the driver's seat. I'll get in the driver's seat. But to get more to your question, they're going to look at somebody to personal guarantee that loan. So when we're getting capital, in this case, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, they're going to be looking at somebody's credit because they can sell it for more money if there's a personal guarantor behind that credit, that loan package. You understand? So
yes.
They will be looking at that. But I need to say some other things. They're not going to just look at your business. They're going to make sure your business is structured properly. That means you're in lender compliance. They're going to make sure that you have a commercial address. Your business is listed in 411. You have articles of incorporation, right? You have an EIN number. You have a business bank account. You have all of those things to be structured before they go to funding. So yes, your personal credit will be nice, icing or cherry on the cake, but they need your business to be structured and they need to do their due diligence. My son, straight out of American University out of DC, Wells Fargo picked him up, moved him to Charlotte, North Carolina, and they set him up in the pre-qualification office. So they were 6 days a week. He was going over files, making sure you had your due diligence, that you had a place of business, you had a business telephone number, you had an EIN, they went to your website. They did lender qualifications on a file. So we know they're going to do this. So we have a system till we make sure if you're in front of a lender, your file is lender.
Absolutely. And once again, I got to reference it. Episode 2, part 2, where we talked about getting your EIN, the business bank account, setting up your commercial office, all of those things. So, yep. all the steps are coming together. So, and I'm asking these questions because I like to uncover everything. I like to get through all these layers. So, and I know Herman has the answers too, so that's why I'm asking all these questions, just in case. I'm just trying to formulate what I think our viewers might be asking while they're watching this. So you did break down, just what the bank looks at as far as like the structure and everything. So thank you for that. So then on the next scenario, whereas, where we put the trust as a multi-member, and let's say that trust was 85%, then you're the remaining 15%. How would the bank look at that?
So same thing, a trust could have business trade lines and everything else, right? But I want you to talk to the person who opens your trust to see what the best structure is for you. Because a trust pretty much is a business. It's an LLC or a C Corp, however they set the trust up. It is a business, and that business can have it. But a lot of times you open up a trust for anonymity. You understand? Mm-hmm. For anonymity is what you're doing. But the trust also can be a full, has business credit. So this title here is business trade lines. So let me explain this to you, right? So the bank will sell their package. That loan package will be sold, but they have to do their due diligence. After 2000, 2008, 2009, when the whole economy slipped down, all type of stuff was going on. The banks was accused of not doing their due diligence. They were just selling, bundling, and selling the loans to Wall Street. Now Wall Street says that I want you to make sure that the person who has credit, that their credit is optimized. I want to make sure that they are legitimate business, right? Before I buy that package from you. And so we know this already. So before we send you to get a business loan, we're going to make sure that your business credit is A1 as well. If we have to add business trade lines, we will add business trade lines as well. So you can go to Uline, Granger, a whole bunch of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 type of companies, Best Buy, Home Depot, Sam's, all of these places, and you can add trade lines to their business. Because let me say that you come to me for business funding, and then I look at your Dun & Bradstreet, I look at your business experience, business Equifax, and there are no business trade lines on there. I'm going to think something is wrong. How have you been in business, let's say 2 years, 3 years, or whatever, and you have no business credit? Nobody can report that you pay your bills on time. I'm going to see that as a red flag. So I may give you money, but I'm sure not going to give you as much as somebody that have an established Dun & Bradstreet or Paydex score, established business experience, Teller score, something like that. So one way to get that is to add business trade lines, and not just add those business trade lines, but you want to pay your bills before time. So if you got 30-day note, you want to pay that on day 20 or 21. That gives you more points on your Paydex score because you pay before time. Anything else?
Okay. So how do you obtain those business trade lines? Because you did break down how to get the personal trade lines. So how do you get the business trade lines?
So beautiful. So the business trade lines, again, I have a company. We help you with that, but let me tell you how you can circumvent that. I would prefer you to work with somebody that know what they're doing than for you to try this on the first time. But let's just say that you wanted to try this on the first time, right? So what you would do pretty much is that you can Google tier 1 accounts, and then what's going to pop up are the Uline, the Grangers, the Shirtseys, tier 1 companies. What that pretty much means is that they help new businesses to establish credit. They will front you a product or service, and they expect you to pay it in 30 days or less. And then that's what goes to establish that. Now, my preference for you to get the maximum amount of funding, you need to have at least between 15 and 20 business trade lines reported to that credit profile. And that can be gas cards. That can be accounts at Home Depot, Uline, Shirtsey, Best Buy, Home Depot. It's different. There's 700 or more vendors that you can use to be able to start your business credit. But you want that business credit score to be prevalent. Let me tell you why. Before I just recently got about $100,000 using an A-Shelf Corporation. And one of the things that the banks weren't looking for today was for you to have age and for you to have business credit. So these business trade lines help you to build your business credit.
Wow. One of those moments where we just need to let that marinate. That was just a handful of information. Wow. He is really dropping some gems, y'all. Just like the gems that are being dropped on this show, on this podcast. Man, I didn't have this when I started off as an entrepreneur. I shared that story early in the episodes. So it's just like, if I had a mentor to show me just the resources that you're receiving right now on this podcast, man, I would have been a lot further much sooner, instead of just bumping my head figuring things out on my own and then eventually acquiring mentors along the way. But this information is invaluable, so thank you for that, Herman. So if you would break down business credit versus, business line of credit versus, what is it, a business loan, or am I getting it twisted? Business line of credit or business credit? What are the
great? No, that's a great question, because I get that question a lot, right? So I need you to think about this, right? Pretty much, state of Kentucky, to open up a LLC is $35, just $35. So you can go to the state of Kentucky, open up an entity for $35. You can go to IRS for free, get your EIN. And technically, you have an EIN number and you have a corporation, an LLC, right?
Right.
And so now I want you to think that you're in Kentucky with a $35 corporation, and you go to the bank and you ask the bank for money. You understand? Brand new corporation, $35. And you say, listen, bank, can you give me $50,000 on this corporation? More than likely, they're not going to do it right away unless you have some things. So one of the things that the bank is going to do is they're going to look to see if you're an established business, if you have a commercial address, telephone, some of the things that you talked about in episode 2. So just having a corporation and an EIN is worthless if it cannot be looked up, if they cannot look you up and see that that particular business has done business with other entities and has done so successfully. So this is why they run and they pull your Dun & Bradstreet from D&B. They pull your business experience, business Equifax, because they want to see if that particular entity has established business credit. So they're not going to give you the business funding unless they can verify that you have business credit. Okay. So another thing about business funding is there's different types of business funding, right? So for we're taking new companies right now, they're going to use your personal credit as evidence of character to pay back, because your business is too new to really establish anything. So, but my preference is, before you ask anybody for funding, establish business credit, establish accounts at Uline, Granger, Best Buy, Home Depot. There's hundreds of them that you can do it. Gas cards are really good. You want to buy stuff that you utilize for your business. I don't care if it's computers from Dell or whatever the case might be. You want that track record of doing business. Why? Because those type of businesses that have established business credit, they get higher amounts of funding. You understand? They get higher amounts of funding. So again, compare what I said before. If you go with a $35 corporation with no business credit, no business compliance, nothing, they're not going to give you money. So you need to be in lender compliance, and you need to have business credit to be able to get the maximum amount of funding.
Got it. Okay, so we've gone through all of those steps, and congratulations, we got our funding. What would you say is the next strategy as far as like how to utilize that funding? Because I forgot to mention at the very beginning of this episode, the reason you want to acquire funding, one of the things why you want to acquire funding is, getting equipment, getting materials. Depending on what industry you're in, you need materials, you need marketing, whatever it might be. So it's just like, that's what part of that funding goes towards, is just getting equipment for you to run your business and do what you need to do to offer that service or that product. So now we've acquired that funding, Herman. So what is, some strategy we'll put in place to effectively use those funds? What will we use those funds, and what will we put it towards?
Okay, so when you went got the funds, 9 out of 10 times you told them capital expansion. That means basically to expand your business, to hire more employees, to get more equipment, to be able to grow your bottom line. So that's what it is. So at this particular stage, you borrow money, and let's just say you borrowed the money at 8%. So now it's time for you to put that money to work. So you need to invest in anything that's going to give you a higher than 8% return, because your cost of capital was 8% and you owe 8%. So if you borrowed $1 million, you owe $80,000. So you need to invest in anything that's going to give you a return. So if you are going to hire new employees, those employees need to be making at least 5 times, bringing in 5 times in sales for every new employee. So anything that you invest in, you have to have a return on that investment to be able to cover what they call your nut. So whatever the amount cost of capital that you need to invest it in something that's going to give you a return that's greater than your cost of capital. Otherwise, it's a negative investment. So normally, what I do is before I seek the capital, I have a plan for the capital. I say, okay, I plan on expanding and adding 2 employees. Those 2 employees is going to bring me in an additional 100,000, 500,000, or whatever the case might be in sales. So whatever you invest in, if it's more equipment, that equipment needs to be able to have like a monetary value. How much more money this new equipment is going to bring in, right? And same thing with marketing, right? It's called return on ad spend. So if you're going to budget toward marketing as well, you want to make sure that if you're spending 10,000 on marketing, that is bringing in 30, 40, or 50,000. So whatever you spend your money on, you want to make sure you have a return on investment that's greater than your cost of capital.
Wow. Absolutely. And y'all see why I asked that question, because seamlessly segued into our next point here. It's just investing in that automation, the systems integration, virtual assistant, employees, etc. So this is where we get into the scaling, the growth versus scale that we was talking about earlier. So now we're getting into, now you're buying into systems, and I can just share my own personal story with this, with the unique idea I had with the pivot. I saw that the demand was going to be great with everybody locked in, and then us pivoting into the virtual event space. But, I still wasn't prepared for the demand. It was literally just a wall of demand. I had to quickly, how companies scale in, 1-2 years time, I had to scale my company in a 4 months condensed time, because that's how much work was coming in. So I had to quickly invest in those systems. I had to build out my back office. I had to hire a firm to build out my back office so I could put in metrics, KPIs, and things like that. So eventually, as I start turning my employees into sales agents, all those metrics and everything were there, as far as like what Herman was talking about, as far as like I need them to hit certain goals, I need them to bring in certain amount of business. But it was also automation, streamlining my processes, because I was quickly getting to the point of burnout, because I was taking on 8 to 12 consultation calls every single day, and I was missing breakfast, lunch, dinner. Like I was going days without eating because there was so many consultations coming in. So I had to quickly record myself and automate, streamline everything. And I had to get that system in place quickly because there was so much work coming in. So go into that, Herman, just as far as the importance of automation systems and integrations, what those look like. I just gave one example, of course, but just go into what some more of those systems look like.
Okay, no, great. So I love it. So one book that I recommend my students to read is The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, right? In The 4-Hour Workweek, I read that about over a decade ago, and I was simply amazed that this guy had put systems in place to be able to only work 4 hours a week, but still make a nice living off of that, right? So one of the things that he put into place was automated systems, right? Where they had people to automatically answer the phone, where he put a sales funnel in place. He put virtual assistants in place. Mm-hmm. And so all of those systems freed up his time to where he only had to dedicate 4 hours a week to maintain a 6 or 7 figure income. And I fell in love with that, the fact that you can get and run commercials. And from those commercials, a sales funnel could be in place. And then they automatically could send emails. You automatically, it's just called digital marketing. You automatically could get virtual assistants out of the Philippines, out of India, out of South America. Right? You can get virtual assistants to ensure, oversee the automated systems that you have. I'll give you one example. One example is that I have a AI system to help people clean up their credit, DIY credit, optimize.ai. And that AI system, the software does everything. Artificial intelligence goes in and it cleans up somebody's personal credit for 1/10 of what I used to charge. For an example, if I had to remove a bankruptcy or clean up your credit, I might charge you $2,500. AI is so efficient, so automatic, right? To where you can get this done for less than $50. Think about this. Picture this, that if you have bad stuff on your credit, artificial intelligence can go in and remove late payments. It can remove charge-offs. It can remove bankruptcies, everything that an individual can do, and it does it automatically. So right now, I got thousands of people inside of my system, and I've not done nobody's credit profile. Artificial intelligence has done their credit profile. I don't have to deal with thousands of people because I have virtual assistants to answer any questions that they might have or to help them with anything. So right now, although I have thousands of people inside the system, to me is fully automated, and that AI cleans up their credit, and the virtual assistants assist them if they have any questions, comments, or concerns. So this is what you want to do to scale, is that you want to put systems in place for you to be able to handle many people using technology such as artificial intelligence, using virtual assistants or what have you. But now you have to train those. You have to put systems in place and policies and procedures for them. But after that, it takes care of itself. My virtual assistants have been with me going on 3 years, right? And in that 3 years period of time, I've gotten multiple return on investment from my virtual assistants, because each one, they handle multiple clients for me. And those clients, they pay pretty well. So again, I love the segue into automating your systems, and that automation can come from marketing. That automation can come from you training virtual assistants. That can come from putting a system in place that is fully automated.
Absolutely, and that was episode 4 where we talked about creating your marketing strategy. And I, use my own personal story of I hired my digital marketer, and she absolutely killed it. Like, she lives, eats, sleeps, and breathes digital marketing. She set up the funnel, she set up the marketing campaign, and she drove so much traffic to my new website. I was already getting organic traffic just because I was feeling a need at the time during the pandemic. But then she was running ads in the background, and she was just bringing in a whole nother channel of traffic. So business was very good, very good. So yeah, having a marketing strategy it's stellar. Even talking to my CPA when it was taxes time, my CPA told me, he just looked, I forgot what page it is, but he just says typically with his clients, he'll look at how much they spend on marketing, and before he turns the page over and look at how much revenue they made, he can just look at how much they spent on marketing and know how well they did on their revenue. If they didn't spend much on marketing, he already knows.
The return on ad spend is great. It's worth it.
Right.
So you're absolutely right. But you said something key. You have to have somebody that know what they're doing to be able to set up the funnel, set up the sales system, to be able to do the email campaign. So you definitely need that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then also at that time, I didn't, artificial intelligence wasn't a thing back there. Even that was 2 years ago. So yeah, just utilizing technology today, artificial intelligence is doing so many things. It's giving a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs return on their investments because there's so many AI tools out there. So there's really no excuse for you to not really succeed in today's landscape. There's really no excuse. There's so many tools, and artificial intelligence is literally doing 80-90% of the work for entrepreneurs out there. So yes, Herman, how did you go about acquiring your 3 virtual assistants? I know you say they've been working with you for 3 years. So what are some places to look to get virtual assistants?
So you can go online, you can go to Fiverr, you can go to Upworks, right? And you can find and interview those. I was fortunate because I was in a program to whereas they send me people to assist me. The way the program pretty much works is that they go out and they find people that need marketing skills, people that need stuff, and they volunteer, but you pay them to find people to volunteer on your project. So you might pay them $1,500 a year, and then they have what I want to call interns that work with you to be able to do something. So that's how I found my first virtual assistant on one of those platforms. And then that person was from the Philippines, and they helped me to find other people to be my virtual assistants.
Absolutely, and like they mentioned interns, because I actually utilize interns. My company does internships for RTF majors, so I just basically got into a relationship with area colleges and universities, and I recruited RTF majors, people who are in communications, marketing, radio, television, film, because I run a digital media or creative agency. So I took them through an internship, and then after 6 months, I offer them position based on their performance. And this was straight from interns to employee kind of pipeline that I set. No one told me to do that. That was just off my own intuition when it came down to me growing back in 2013. It was like, okay, I need help. It's not a me thing, it's now a we thing, and it's just it's too much for me to handle. So I just went on my own accord and just got those relationships with area colleges and universities and recruited interns. So Herman, last thing I want to touch on this, while we're on this point is, I know you didn't mention virtual assistants, and they can pretty much are flexible. They can, do pretty much anything. But would you say you would look at project managers and operations managers? Because I personally, got a project manager to basically be a clone of myself. I taught them all of my systems and how I conduct business and things like that. And they were essentially me, so I didn't have to so much be hands-on and be a part of every single meeting. So it's like they communicate with the employees, they communicated with my clients, they sent out the work and assigned the employees and contractors accordingly. So would you say you can use your virtual assistants for that, or would you still get like an operations or a project manager?
So in your case, it depends how big your project is, how much scaling that you're doing. But yes, I like what you're doing as far as you're training an operations manager. Most of my other businesses have operations managers, somebody that's at the facility, somebody for the employees to turn to, somebody to handle those not so big problems. You have the day-to-day operations. So yes, having an operation manager is crucial. My preference is for the virtual assistants. I had Miss Irene, she helped me to hire them. And so she was seen as the operations manager, but also I was using her as a project manager. We may have several projects going, so she would be over all the projects, and then she would assign the capable VAs to be over independent projects. So if I had 10 VAs and I had Miss Irene would make 11, and then I had 10 different projects, each one of those would be the project, and she would be the project manager for each individual projects, whether we're doing marketing projects, whether we're doing business acquisition projects, whatever it is, or just doing ads. So she would oversee each and every VA when they're working on a project. So those projects also had deadlines, and they also had to send in status reports on those projects.
Okay, so yeah, determine, depending on your needs of your own individual business, you have to determine what will best suit you, either virtual assistants or project or operations manager.
So you also said something very quick. I don't want to keep on much time, but a lot of people try to get a virtual assistant, then they find out that they don't have a policy and procedure in place to even train one or to give them a lot of work. I've seen a lot of friends, they want virtual assistants because they've seen how they made my life easy, but they wasn't structured for a virtual assistant. They didn't have much work. So they went from part-time, full-time to part-time. And then from there, they didn't scale enough to be able to bring on an assistant, right? They just like the idea that somebody was be able to do some of the things, free up some of their time, but their systems wasn't in place. The VAs need to come into a system. So please understand that.
Yep, and that's why I brought up that point, because it's not about the glam and glitz and glory, like, oh, I got employees or I got an assistant. It has to make financial sense. Herman talked about that ROI. It has to be an ROI. So if they're sitting there and you're paying them hourly, I know business owners that just paid people just to boast and say, hey, I have employees or I have an assistant, but it's like they wasn't doing anything. They just paid them on a salary. So it's just like, why are you paying them on a salary and they're not doing anything? Pay them. I know with me personally, even my project manager, I paid them per project. So it's like they were paid based on projects that they were.
It's also the project, yeah.
Exactly. So you got to be smart about it. You got to be strategic about it. All right, so thank you very much, Herman. So on our last point of this episode, let's get to shelf corporations. So I'll let you go into that because I'm a student here. I'm taking notes on shelf corporations. So please tell us about shelf corporations.
Beautiful. So I need y'all to think about a shelf corporation like fine wine. So a lot of times I've seen these movies where somebody might go in and order a Bordeaux from 69 or 1891 Bordeaux or whatever the case might be. And what made wine so good was age. If you sit up there and you let a great year, a great crop age really well, that wine tastes smooth as could be. So same thing with age corporations, right? An age corporation is somebody started a corporation years ago, let that corporation sit on the shelf, gain age, then pulled it off of the shelf and put it to work. Just like that wine, you would drink that wine after so many years of it aging, you would use that corporation after so many years of being in business. Now, let me tell you why that is important. One of my clients who acquired an age corporation from us, she had previously got denied She was doing Airbnb in a luxurious condominium, a really nice condominium, but they had a requirement. They had a requirement that you be in business at least 2 years. She had only been in business 6 months, so they denied her. So she came to me and said, Mr. Marigny, do you have age corporation? I need one that's at least 2 years old. So I went on the shelf, pulled the shelf corporation that was 5 years old, right? Activated the shelf corporation, and she was able to use that shelf corporation, and now she has about 5 Airbnbs. She's doing about $25,000 a month with her 5 Airbnbs. So it went from a no to a yes because she had an age corporation. So first and foremost, shelf corporation gets its name is because somebody bought a corporation years ago and placed it on the shelf. Make sense?
So when you say a shelf, what is that shelf? What is the
So
shelf?
one thing about, let's think, your corporation is a couple of pieces of papers, right? So if you go and get a corporation, LLC somewhere, they do some, they give you some paperwork showing that you own that corporation. Now, let's say if I went today and I went to, let's say Texas, a Secretary of State, and I bought a corporation, right? Now I could take those pieces of paper and I could put them on the shelf and let them age. I could pay the annual license fee every year and keep them in good standing. But basically, I bought it to let it age, just like you would let wine sit up in a rack in the basement and let it age. Same thing with corporations. So there's companies that go out and they form corporations every time and put them on the shelf and let them age because they can sell them for more. The lady who bought the shelf corporation bought it for $3,000, but now she's making $25,000 a month. So that was a great return on investment for her. Understand? So go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
So age just means that a shelf just means that it's been sitting on the shelf getting aged for a certain amount of time, preferably for years. And the way it normally works is thing is for every year it's about $1,000. So if you buy a 2-year corporation, maybe about $2,000. You buy a 3-year corporation, it's normally about $3,000. We just sell ours for $3,000, but we make sure it's 5 years or better, because we want you to be able to get approved for as much funding as possible. Now, shelf corporation is just age. Now, there's something called age credit ready corporation. It means that I don't just have an age corporation. I put it into compliance. I made sure that that corporation had a website. It made sure it had a commercial address. It had a telephone number tied to that, right? It already had credit in it with Sam's, Walmart, Home Depot, and everything else. So I wasn't content on just letting it sit on the shelf. I wanted to build out the credit on that corporation, because when somebody acquire an age credit ready corporation, that age credit ready is ready for funding because it meets all the lender compliance. Plus, it has business credit already inside of it. And now this age credit ready corporation can get the maximum amount of funding.
Okay. All right. So the way I'm understanding it, and I thank you for it makes sense with the wine analogy also, because it's just basically, because I know some people want to know, especially when you go for funding with banks, they do look at how long you've been in business. So it's like if you're 1 year, if you're like in year one, they're gonna be reluctant because like, oh, this is a new business. But if you have that shelf corporation and it's been sitting for 10 years, there's like
so let me explain real quick.
History.
Let me give you a quick thing, right? So I tell people this all the time, that I help a couple that was on Section 8 and welfare to get funding. What I skip over is the fact that years before I took them to the bank, they had opened up a corporation. They just didn't do anything with it, right? Because they thought opening up a corporation was going to automatically bring them money. So both of them, the husband and wife, each had opened up a corporation, but they didn't do anything with it. It just sat on the shelf, right? So when it came time to get them funding, we activated that age corporation that was at least 2 years old, and all they needed was to be able to have an optimized profile. So that age corporation that was in lender compliance and an optimized credit profile got that family $148,000. You understand? But it had to be 2 years. The bank required for that company to have at least 2 years on it for them to give them what's called a no-doc loan, low doc or no doc. That means that nothing that you're saying is going to be verified. If you tell them that you plan on making $500,000, they take it at your word. You got me? If you tell them that you plan on growing to 10 employees, they take it at the word, as long as your credit profile could back up that low doc loan. But the requirement of this particular bank, Fidelity Bank, was that you be in business at least 2 years. So this is where Age Corporation came in to offset the fact that this company was not making funds at the time.
Okay. So I just want to go back because I know you said you made $3,000 and some whatever figure for these.
So I was telling
shelf
you that
corporations.
lady bought an age corporation. It was 5 years old. She bought it for 3,000, and then she later on was able to get her Airbnbs. Up now, she's up to 5 Airbnbs, making about 25,000 a month. So she had a great return on investment.
Right. So
Because that age corporation.
the question I was going to ask regarding that. So are you pretty much creating shelf corporations to sell to someone later on? Is that the idea
Correct.
behind it? It's just like,
Correct.
hey, don't worry about doing all these steps to set up a business. Already actually set up a corporation. Just buy it from me. And then also, if that is the case, are you doing it in different industries? Are you incorporating in certain industries,
So what
like whether
happens
a
is
restaurant
that
or?
I incorporate and put the NAICS code in the highest profitable technology or medical consulting management.
Got it. Wow. Okay. Selling corporations. That's
Age
another.
credit ready corporations.
Yes, that's very smart. I never even thought about that. So it's just like there's so many avenues. There's so many ways to make money, just with these different strategies. I have
Those
more
are the
questions.
best. Those are the best corporations for funding. You fit all the bells. Your lender compliance is in place. It has credit ready already. It has credit cards in it. It has approved credit without nobody personally guaranteed. There's some companies like Sam, Florida Decor, and other companies. Even with just age credit ready, they'll give you access to capital. It's not going to be as much as if you personally guarantee it. So right now, you can buy an age credit ready corporation with credit in it already. It can already have Home Depot accounts, Florida Decor, Sam's, everything, without you even signing for anything. So you're buying a corporation with credit in it already.
Okay, so we're going back to when we was talking about the multi-member LLC. So when someone buys a corporation from you, are they now putting their name on there, and then it goes back to the bank is looking at them as like 80% of the owner, or what is?
So what happens is that I want you to think of it as that you are buying a company already established. Mm-hmm. You got me? So the credit belongs to that company. So now you're taking over a company that already has trade lines, that already has credit in it already, right? It's already there. So you're acquiring something, and now if you want to go get more funding, then they would use you as a personal guarantee to be able to go and get more funding from Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, different places.
Wow. That's very helpful information. Anything else you want to say about Shelf Corporation? I mean, you really broke it down. And what is it, credit ready?
Age credit ready. Credit ready means that it's lender compliance and it already has at least 15 to 20 trade lines inside the company already. It's already there. So when you acquire the company, it's ready for funding. So that's the thing that you want. It's already ready for funding. You can take that company straight to the bank and go get funding. I bought my wife one about 4 months ago, and we got about 27 trade lines. I added a $500,000 trade line to her so she can max out on any type of funding that she wants.
So now y'all know where that term or that saying comes from, because like you can literally take that to the bank.
I like that. That's correct.
Yeah. So I don't want to misspeak either, but if people don't want to go through the rigmarole of setting up a business, going through all the steps, they can basically go buy a corporation from somebody that's already aged it and set it up. Just buy it from them and already get funding without doing all of the setting the entity up and all that. Is that correct?
That is right. I want you to think about it as real estate, right? So you right now, you can go buy a piece of property and it could be just land. You can go buy the land and you can sell that land if you want to, but you know you'll get more money if you put a fourplex on there. You'll get even more money if the fourplex is rented out. You understand? So I want you to think of it from that way. We're same thing right now. You can go get a corporation from Kentucky for $35. That's just like the land, but you'll get more money if you add a foundation, right? You build a house, and especially if you build an income producing property on there. So now that property is worth more. If you got 4 tenants bringing in $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and now you're selling the land, you're selling the building, and you're selling the cash flow. Same thing with age credit ready corporation. You can go get a age corporation by itself, and you can use it, right, to go after government contracts, or you can go get an age credit ready corporation that has credit established. It's like having those tenants that's already inside of it. It has everything already for you to get maximum amount of funding. So you buying the car ready to go. Well, you waited on it. They fixed it for you, and they sent it to you. They sent your Tesla all kitted out. So you got the kit added, so you can do. So same thing with the Age Credit Corporation. You kitted it out.
Wow. Sounds like I'm about to go get my second business, y'all. Work
It's
smarter,
quicker.
not harder.
It's easier for you to get funding if it has everything in place already. It's like you're already ready. You don't have to go get ready.
Okay, so I have to bring this up. What are the risks for the person that originally bought the corporation and shelved it, and now they sold it to somebody else? Are there any risk or ramifications that will go against them if somebody misuses it, or is it all?
No. So when you buy it, the other person is out, right? That person is out. They've sold it. Now it is your corporation. No different than if you buy somebody's house. But always there's risk involved in anything. So you want to make sure that what you buy in the Age Credit Ready Corporation, you're buying it from a reputable company. You want to make sure that there's no liens or judgments against that corporation, right? So those are you want to make sure, and you can do that by putting up the Dun & Bradstreet Business Experience, Business Equifax. You can run an EIN number. You can see if there's any liens or judgments or any bad credit against anything that you acquire. So yes, I'm glad that you brought that up. You have to do your due diligence to make sure that whoever you're buying the shelf corporation for, there's no liens, tax judgments, nothing against it. You understand? So you have to buy it from somebody that know what they're doing and that are reputable.
Wow, Herman is like a funding encyclopedia. I just want to pick your brain, but we've gotten through this in an hour and 11 minutes. So
okay.
So last question I want to ask you, going back to the multi-member LLCs, because I know you gave the example of just changing the ownership percentage. So each time you change that ownership percentage, is that an amendment, or how simple is that change?
Let's just make it an amendment. A lot of times people just want you to send your articles of organization to them, operating agreement. So a lot of times when you go to funding, like Louisiana, you can create your operating agreement as you see fit, right? Okay. So a lot of times they have to ask me for my operating agreement. So if they want to see who owns what percent, so we hold a meeting right then and there and said, okay, I vote that you have 85%, I have 15. We change the operating agreement and we send an operating agreement to the financial institution.
Okay,
the best
just be ready for that, because
we don't want everybody's credit pool. We only want one person's credit pool at a time.
Right, okay. Yeah, because just be ready for those amendments, because I talked in previous episodes about amendments and how pricey they can be. So just already have funds aside, because the inevitable does happen and you have to make changes. So that, once again, is the purpose of this podcast, to make sure you set yourself up correctly and set yourself up financially for your business to succeed right out the gate, so you don't have to, so you can avoid those costly mistakes. Herman, thank you so much for this talk. We are definitely doing a part 2. He's coming back, y'all. So because we got more stuff to talk about in episode 6. But yes, he's coming back for part 2. But please tell our viewers how they can find you, because of course you offer this service with your credit assembly, and all the other initiatives got going on. So whatever it is that you have.
The easiest way to catch up with me is through my 10K card. It's Herman, Herman 10K.com. So Herman10K.com has been the easiest way for you to catch up with me. That's Herman, the number 10, the letter K.com, Herman10K.com. That way you get my digital card, and then you can see the different businesses that I have, from the DIY Credit Optimized, from the shelf corporations, right, from the business scan. You can see everything under one roof. So that's Herman, Herman10K.com. It's the best way to see what all I have to offer my clients.
Yep, and that is on the screen, everyone, so just follow that link. It's also in the description of the podcast as well. And then you did give your recommended book earlier, so if you would just give that book again. So what book or books do you recommend? Well, no more than 2 if you have.
All right, so earlier I told you about Tim Ferriss, the 4-Hour Work Week. It is great for building systems, automating things. It is absolutely great for that, right? So the other book is one that I started about 25 years ago, and I absolutely read it, and I recommended it to my kids and to my students. That is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. You want to read that from a standpoint to understand money, right? You want to understand systems. You want to understand how to be able to invest and what you're looking for to invest. So Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki would be my next recommended for people that just starting out.
Absolutely. So once again, Herman, want to thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge. This was a short episode, but it was jam-packed with so much information and gems. We will have Herman back because he's going to go more in depth as far as, well, I'm not going to give it away, but he'll be back on for episode 6. But thank you very much, Herman, for your time. And as I always do, I would like to end with this. According to the Small Business Administration, about 20% of small businesses fail within the first year, 30% fail within the second year, and 50% fail after 5 years in business. So the tips, advice, and resources we provide on this podcast will ensure that you are not one of those statistics. Hopefully you are all out there taking notes, but until next time, I'm outie.